Hey up. So tonight we're going to be prepping some supermarket bought brisket. Comes in a packet, it's rolled and tied with string. We're going to be prepping this to go onto the smoker tomorrow as a nice piece of smoked brisket. So we're just prepping the piece of brisket to be seasoned overnight. So all we're going to do now is cut the string off them. And remove any straggly bits. And then what you'll see is with the rolled brisket, it'll all flatten out like that. So I bought 3 pieces today. What I've actually ended up with is a piece from right at one end of the brisket. I think this might call this the flat. And then right from the other end of the brisket towards the point. So I've got 3 pieces of brisket. It's like I've got 2 sort of flats and 1 point. So what we're going to do now is salt the meat. So this is just ordinary, just sea salt really. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it's not ground or anything. The important thing about using something like sea salt is it's not got all the anti-caking agents in, which just make the salt impure. So this is what you would read in a barbecue book as kosher salt, basically. So it's going to grab some nice big pinchfuls of this salt, and we are going to salt it liberally. Then we're going to turn them over so we can get salt on the other sides. Not before I wash my hands again. Right, hands washed. Now I can get some more salt on the other side of the steaks, other side of the briskets. You want plenty on. You don't need to cover it, but make sure it's pretty much all over it. That's 1. 2. And finally 3. Right, so they're all covered in salt now. Wash the hands again. So they've all got a nice layer of salt on them now. Time to go and put them in the fridge to rest overnight, and then tomorrow morning they're ready for the seasoning. So the seasoning for this brisket is simple, and it's quite a popular one in the barbecuing world, called SPG. Stands for salt, pepper and garlic. So all I've done is taken some sea salt, given a bit of a grind, mortar and pestle, some fresh black pepper, lots of it, so sometimes it's worth just buying the pre-crushed tubs, and garlic granules. Add those into a bowl, stir it together, and what you're looking for is something like I'd say a colour of a sandy beach really. A bit like that, a bit like a sandy beach. And tomorrow morning, that's going to be good to rub on the briskets. It's going to give me a nice bark and a great flavour. Good morning. So we're up bright and bleary eyed to get the smoker lit and get this fire up and running. Let's get some coal on. And for good measure, chuck on a part burned log from last time just to help keep it going while I go inside and prep everything else now. Let's come back on. We'll see you in about 20 minutes. So the smoker's preheating. What we're going to do now is get the rub onto this brisket. It's the rub that I made yesterday, and it's the brisket that's been salting, dry brining overnight in the fridge. So all we need to do is give this a bit of a stir again, just to loosen it all up, and then literally start covering the brisket with it all over. So I want to cover this brisket quite liberally with the rub, making sure that all sides, including the ends. We've got a nice layer of rub on it. I was actually going to do a third mix for this, to be fair, and put something a little bit different in with this rub, but I forgot. Hey ho, we've got 3 SPG briskets to come. So the brisket's ready to go in now. What we're going to do is put a glove on to open the door because it can get fairly hot. We're cooking it on the lower shelf, just going to get the better temperature. And I'm just going to slap these bad boys straight onto the grill. I'll try and leave the thicker end of the briskets towards the back because that tends to be the hotter part. And here's the one that I put the thermometer into. Okay, try and thread that through the little feed holes. Close the door. And that's it. So the trick now is to basically just monitor this temperature. Try not to let it drop below about 200. Try not to let it get up above about 250. With mine, I've got a little handle up here which controls the amount of airflow going up, which keeps the temperature up and down. So that's how I control the heat. Chuck an extra log on, chuck some extra coal on if it's getting too low. Close the vent if it's getting too hot. Simple as that. We're looking anywhere between 6 and 10 hours, to be fair, so it's always better to give yourself plenty of time. So I've started off nice and early this morning, just so that if it does take longer than I wanted it to, we're still not eating too late. It'll always keep warm in a cool box or in a very, very low oven, wrapped in foil and what have you. You can keep it like that for a couple of hours before you're ready to eat it. It'll still be nice and juicy. So, one golden rule: if you're looking, you ain't cooking. So try not to open that up too many times. So we're going to get a log on here now to kickstart the smoke as well. Got some nice dried out logs, oak this. Some people say to remove the bark, and personally I say, look, if it comes off easy enough in your hands, then fair enough. If it don't worry too much about it. So I'm just going to chuck a couple of those on to start. Get a couple of those on to start off, and we're going to watch that temperature. We're going to watch that temperature soar now because we've just added fire to it. So it's currently at 216 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to steadily climb. When that starts getting too high, I'm going to close my vent down at the top. So all barbecues are fundamentally the same. You've got inflow of air to feed the fire, and then you've got outflow of air. Generally, people tend to adjust the top vents for the heat on this type of thing, but obviously every barbecue is a bit different, but fundamentally the same. I've got my coffee because it is too early for a beer, really. So one thing I almost forgot, guys, is that I'm going to put a big pan of water underneath the meat as well, so it creates a bit of steam in the atmosphere, and that's just going to help try and keep the brisket nice and moist throughout the cooking process. Now that water is probably going to all boil away and evaporate, so it helps to keep your eye on it if possible. And what it also does is it stops a lot of the juices from the meat from just landing on your grill. Just helps keep it that little bit cleaner. So close it up again. Sorted. So the temperature probe that's inside the meat itself is showing about 160. So I reckon we've hit what they call the stall, which is when it just stops getting any hotter. It seems to stop cooking. So there's two things you can do with this. You can either push through it, but then that can result with the British briskets, it can result in it being a bit dry and tough. So what I like to do, and what many others will swear by, is take the briskets out and wrap them up in some sort of tin foil. Now what I'm using is a layer of tin foil with a layer of greaseproof paper on top of it. That's going to help it keep it spark, but it's also going to help it keep really moist. So we'll take the first one. See, that is looking pretty good. So all I'm going to do with this is put it onto the greaseproof paper and a layer of tin foil. Move it over to one side a little bit more, and I'm going to wrap it with the greaseproof paper first. Fairly tight, and then wrap over that with the foil. So you got a nice tight parcel. Now that's going to go back in the smoker. I'm going to put the thermometer back on it again to keep its monitor its temperature. So have a look, shall we? Oh yeah, that is looking mighty fine. So we'll take this one off as well. Now this, if you remember from earlier in the video, this is what I called the point. So you can see the shape of it slightly different to the other pieces. And that's going to have a different texture as well. And then last but not least, so this is the one that had the barbecue probe in it. So this is the one that I've been using to sort of check the temperature. And the others will have changed a little bit, but the variation won't be too much in between them, I don't think. So I'm going to take this one off. Look at that. And get that wrapped up as well. So we're going to put these back in the smoker now. I'll stick the thermometer into one of them. Doesn't matter too much which one it is, but we'll go with this middle one here, just so I can sort of monitor what's happening with that. And we're going to leave that until it gets to about 203 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's going to be absolutely perfect. So maybe another couple of hours on there. Keep it topped up with wood. It's dropped a bit on the temperature because I've been opening the door. That's going to drastically alter the temperature it's showing. But a quick look inside here shows me that we're still quite good. So I'm going to chuck another lump of wood on. Although at this point now I've wrapped it all up in the foil, it's not really going to take on much more of a smoke flavour, so I'll probably put that last piece of wood on just to get the heat going, and then just top it up with coal after that. Looks and smells great. Okay, so the alarm's gone off now, which says that the smoker, that the brisket inside the smoker is about 203 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what we're looking for. So I'm going to just check them with the little thermopen probe thing, and then we'll see what they look like. Okay, so the long, thin, flat end of the brisket is looking like it's at temperature now, but the point end is a few degrees behind, so I'm going to leave that one in for a bit longer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off the thermometer, put it into the other piece, and I'm going to take this inside and we're going to put it to rest for a few hours now until it's ready. So you can put these in cool boxes, but I tend to put mine in my oven, get on very low, 40 degrees, which is unusual for an oven to go that low, to be fair. There's one that I took out earlier. I'll put that in next to that, and we can leave that now. It'll stay like that for a good couple of hours, It's not going to cook anymore. It's not going to dry out anymore. If anything, it's just going to sort of get juicier, and then we're going to be able to carve it up. So the smoker, in case anybody was wondering, is one that I had made by a company called Meat City Smokers. Great set of guys, and they do a fantastic job. This is actually a fire that I had at an old house that I took out and I used as a garden sort of, you know, fire log burner for a while. And I asked him to put it together for me and turn it into this beast. It literally weighs about half a ton. It was a right effort getting it into the garden, I can tell you. And now I've had my shack built around it. As you can see, it is never coming out. I call it Big Bertha, not very imaginative, but it's got plenty of space in it. Solid sort of cast iron, pretty thick, pretty heavy duty, and it holds temperature. It's perfect. I tell you, if you're after a bespoke homemade smoker setup, then you could do a lot worse than ringing Meat City Smokers. You can find them on Facebook, and give the guy a call. Very friendly chap, and he'll certainly help you out. Okay, so that's the last piece of brisket up to temperature. So we're just going to take out the thermometer out of the top, put that to one side, and then take this last piece and pop it into the oven with the rest. Okay guys, so now it's time to the big unveiling. We're going to unwrap the briskets. We'll start with the point. Let's see what this looks like. Plenty of juice coming out of there, which is always a good sign. It means it's not dried out completely. Let's get that out of the foil. Clean that up later. And then out to the greaseproof paper. So it's looking quite good. It's got a nice colour to it, a bit of bark to it. It's certainly cooked. It's not too stiff, but proof will come when we cut into it. Wash my hands now. Right, so it's important when you're cutting brisket that you cut against the grain, and that's going to make it much more pleasurable to eat, because it's going to be it's not going to be as tough. So I'll just take this end off here. Let's have a look at what we've got inside. Oh yeah, that's smoke ring. Nice and pink around the outside. It looks like it's fairly moist on the inside, not too dried out at all. I can see quite a lot of juice coming through there. So look at the smoke ring on that. That looks absolutely perfect. And the juice coming out of it as I'm cutting it. That looks absolutely epic. Now what I'm going to do now is, because I can't help being too curious, I'm going to get one of the other pieces, which is the flat from the brisket. I'm going to take a look at that as well. Look at that. That's amazing. So I'm going to take a piece of brisket from the flat end now and cut into this. Really juicy. The amount of juice that's just come out of that as I've moved it is unbelievable. Take this big thick end off here, and yeah, look at that, exactly the same sort of results. I'll just give that a squeeze. See the juice coming out of there. There's a lovely looking piece of meat. So I'm going to continue and just slice all of these up now against the grain so it's tender to the bite, and then we're going to start serving them up.